I was reluctant to buy Helldivers 2 after watching solo gameplay early on. It looked very repetitive and samey, and like it would get boring very quickly. The question on a lot of people's minds when a new game comes out is, how long is this game going to be popular, and therefore worth buying and investing time into? Because no one wants to buy a game only to have their friends or the player base leave for another game a few weeks later. But after watching squad gameplay and seeing the automatons, and that it wasn't just bugs, I decided why not? What's surprising actually playing the game is the secondary mechanics. The stratagems added both an extra layer of gameplay, but also a panic that I wasn't expecting. The game actually does have some basic stealth elements that are there if you wish to utilize them. The chaos caused by friendly fire, the variety of different missions, decent co-op matchmaking and gameplay, and being able to stay together for further missions, yeah, basic, but some games don't have this. And the progression system, something we've discussed with other single-player / co-op games, is inclusive of new players who are just getting into it now, but is fun and encourages you to keep playing, and unlocking better stratagems, better armor, and better weapons. Even the in-game menu system is a decent balance between something like Payday 3, which is flat and detached from the gameplay, and Darktide or Marvel Avengers' interactive menu system. Yeah, because I really want to run around all over the place just to access my upgrades after a mission. Now, I think this game is most fun when it's played with a squad. Sure, you can play solo. I'm sure it can be fun and challenging in its own way, but it can be very quiet and lonely, and it's not really my thing. Overall though, from what I've seen so far, I'm impressed. One problem that Helldivers 2 could have suffered from is hype, or overhype. The game is what it is. It doesn't make any big sweeping promises of changing the landscape of gaming forever. It's something that you can drop in and out of with your friends, on your own, or in matchmaking, and have a lot of fun. We seem to be in a weird spot with gaming, and we all feel it. So many so-called AAA games being released in such a terrible state that were hyped up to be the next big thing by devs, content creators, journalists. And it's opened up a space in the industry, games like Helldivers 2 to slot into, for the gaming community to say, yes, this is what a game should be, and at a reasonable price. Although this does reopen the problem of gamers hyping up games like Palworld, and then like a month later jumping onto Helldivers. So it wasn't that good. It was just better than the AAAs, and it's something to think about with the future of Helldivers. Which brings us to the real truth of Helldivers 2. What helped to make this game so successful? Propaganda. Now, Helldivers had a bit of a rocky launch much like other games did, with player counts surpassing server capacity, just like Payday 3 did, and many other games. However, the Helldivers 2 devs spun this in a way that other games were unable to. They managed to market this flaw in the game as though the game was so popular they had to increase server capacity to make space for all the unexpected players, and also sort of implying that this was because the game was so good. Whereas we discussed in the Payday 3 video, that game suffered immensely from matchmaking errors and overwhelmed servers, and took a huge loss in Steam reviews and media coverage. What is essentially the same problem, just framed in a different way. If you can appreciate the irony here, a game rooted in meme-level propaganda has an amazing real-life propaganda machine at work, and it's fueled by the player base, just as it is in the game universe, and it's working. The Galactic War effort, for instance, something I hear people talking about a lot, being able to see an overall progress bar of the combined efforts of all the Helldivers on the front lines, seeing other ships out the window firing orbitals, or friendly ships being taken out around you. And we all saw the articles and memes about J.O.E.L, that one dev, the game master that decides the fate of the war. Again, very smart PR and marketing strategies, getting all the players to go out there and spread the word, giving them a gaming overlord that they can pray to or curse the name of. It's the perfect interplay between the game narrative and the real world. Now look, it's a nice touch and everything, and I do understand what people are talking about, but in reality it pretty much translates to a menu screen with a number going up and down on each planet. This can be easily automated and essentially doesn't have to mean anything until the devs decide it does. And like I said, it's a smart idea to add a narrative behind the devs' choices, and it probably is related to the player count and the mission success in some way. But let's say everyone decides to jump onto Malevelon Creek and liberate that planet far quicker than the devs expected. They just hit a button and reset it, and then said, oh, they took it back. And again, I understand that there are many players that enjoyed that side to the game, and I think it was a great idea to add that ongoing narrative to explain what's going on within the game lore. It fuels that propaganda that we were talking about, allowing players to spread this narrative all across the internet. The way the lore and the narrative is handled in this game has gotten many players attached to it. Rather than bombarding you with cutscenes and trying to force you to take the story in, the lore is given in easy to digest chunks in the background. with hints to what's going on in the world of Helldivers on the radio or on message boards and TV screens in-game, without taking you out of the action, allowing you to follow along if you wish. Dailies and weeklies like the orders, they're common in many games, there's not too much to say about them. So it's a nice touch, but the truth about J.O.E.L and the Galactic War effort is that it's ultimately a gimmick, and the real longevity of the game will come down to the gameplay, and not necessarily the propaganda surrounding the game, or any controversies that arise from the devs. Many of the video reviews on whether or not you should get Helldivers 2 list all the great things about the game, and make a big point of stating this ongoing galactic war and narrative. But right at the end, many say that you should get this game sooner rather than later, before the player count starts to drop. That seems like kind of conflicting information. The game's so good, but people aren't going to be playing it for that long, and this is what I mean by the story being a bit of a gimmick, and ultimately it comes down to the gameplay. The devs are now in a race against time between the speed that players are progressing and the amount of content they can generate. And this is a problem that every game faces, especially online co-op games. Once players have unlocked everything and played missions multiple times, yeah, it's gonna get a little old. And this isn't a gripe about the game, but I think it's something that everyone is aware of but doesn't want to admit. So busy enjoying the high of the hype that they don't want to face the reality that eventually players are gonna catch up with the content that the developers are releasing, get a bit bored and move on. That doesn't mean it's not a good game, and it doesn't mean that people won't keep coming back to it. It's just an inevitable part of any online game, and it's to be expected. Many of the stratagems in the game are essentially useless and just not worth taking with a limited loadout, but the devs are doing a pretty good job of balancing them and making more of them worth taking, giving players more options for their build and avoiding that toxic meta. It's also great to see more mission types being added into the game, helping the game stay fresh. You can clearly see that the focus is on having fun and not trying to milk players with pay to win. We should also note that microtransactions aren't really an issue with this game. It's a reasonably priced game for what you get, and there's no need to spend any more money afterwards. There's a few bugs here and there, the different difficulty settings seem to need some work, but it's tweaks here and there, it's nothing huge. Over time, players are just going to have to decide for themselves whether the lore and narrative of a game is going to be enough to tie them over for the next content update. So that's the truth of Helldivers 2. It does what it says it's going to do, and you get enough bang for your buck, but nothing lasts forever, and I can already see some players starting to drop off a little bit, but also many players are really loving this game still. Let me know in the comments which side you fall on. It'll be interesting to see what happens when new factions are introduced, and who knows, a whole new wave of players who have been holding off could decide to join the fray. Who knows, this game could hold people's attention for months or years, but remember, it's okay if it doesn't. There's nothing wrong with just enjoying the game while it lasts, and appreciate the fun that you've had. Let's just try to keep some perspective so we don't fall into the trap of overhyping something and building expectations impossibly high, and enjoy spreading managed democracy to the galaxy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.